All right, it's 4:01, so we are going to get ready to get started. Yes, we are going to have a seat, Mayor, and join us for a moment. And so thank you everyone for coming and welcome to our 2024 Budget Planning Town Hall. Tonight our focus is public safety. This is the first of two budget town halls that we have happening for this planning session. So as I said, today we're going to focus on public safety, and tomorrow we welcome you to come back for Parks, Streets, and DPW. It will be here in this room, and that will take place from 6 to 8 tomorrow night. So tonight you're going to hear a little bit from the mayor, and he's going to share, but mostly you're going to hear from our controller and from our fire safety personnel. Our chiefs are here to talk about what's happening, what are the plans for the upcoming year, and we invite you to give your input. Because it's a smaller crowd, we did not have any formal handwritten forms for you to turn in this time, but we certainly invite you to ask questions. We do, though, ask that you're respectful of our chiefs as they're making their presentations and sharing information, and then when they are done, they will then open it up for questions, and we will walk around with the microphone and make sure that we can answer those questions for you. Your input is important. It is appreciated. And now, though, to get us started to why you're here, not to hear me ramble on, we are going to turn it over to Mayor, who is going to do some welcoming and sharing some information about the city with you. On a side note, I do want to make sure you all are aware that this meeting is being recorded.
So I'm going to stand up just because that's my history. Those of you who don't know, I was a classroom teacher for 33 years. Liz knows because she was in the same school I was at. I do a lot better when I'm on standing up and using my hands and so on. So I'm not going to speak for a long time today, but first of all, I want to kind of thank all of you for coming here and showing the interest in being a part of this budgeting process. This is my 8th budget that I'll be overseeing. The city budget, and I'll use round figures here, anywhere from $25 million to $27 million is the municipal budget. We also have a utility budget that's anywhere, again, from $28 to $31 million over the course of those 8 years. So we have a fairly substantial budget that we deal with every year, and it's fairly intricate, and you've probably already seen the rather thick budget books that we put out every year. If you don't have a copy of it, you can get it online. So our budgets, one thing I'm very proud of is that our budgets have been about as transparent as is humanly possible. So anytime that you have a question or a concern about even line items within a budget, you can find those online, look them up, and get your answers for you. You can also send emails. Tyler's pretty good about responding to emails. Tyler and Humphrey both can respond to emails if you have questions on the budget. Proud to say that we just earned our, correct me if I'm wrong, our 7th straight GFOA award, which is something that very few cities in Indiana get every year. We're one of 3 that received it last year. We may be even smaller number that's received it 7 consecutive years. What that is it's an award based upon your budget presentation on how clearly and how completely and how significantly you're able to explain and to present a budget to basically the people of your city. So that's one thing I think that I remain quite proud of. Tyler had a good teacher. He interned and then worked for Jason Fenwick. Jason, of course, took a job working for a more lucrative firm, which often happens, but Tyler was trained by him, and just last week, Jason did volunteer to come in and to work with myself and Tyler on some of the last second things that we were doing with regard to a budget. Cities in Indiana are required to have a balanced budget. We can't deficit spend. It's illegal in Indiana. You just can't do it. So when you present a balanced budget, you'll hear this often, people talking about, well, we presented a balanced budget. Well, of course you did. You have to. You can't present a budget that's not balanced. So in Lawrence, we've been able to achieve the last several years a mounting operating reserve. It even got us through the pandemic years where the reserve may have been brought down a little bit, but we still have been able to get to that. What are we at, 25% right now on OR as of a couple of months ago. So that's kind of the gold standard of having operating reserve. That's think of it like a savings account. It's not really a good idea to maintain much more than that because it is taxpayer revenue that's coming in. So if your OR gets too big, it means you probably should be investing that back into your city, which is what we try to do too. So I'm going to turn it over is Tyler next, Corey? So I'm going to turn it over to Tyler. And again, thank you for coming. Just be aware that if you have any questions whatsoever, if you need an answer, you can find it online or you can call and ask us and we'll get the answer to you as quickly as we can. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. So I'll give a brief kind of financial overview, talk about our primary revenue sources and what we're looking at going into 2024. And then you're going to hear from our fire chief and then our police chief. So let's get started here. So first off, we're going to cover, again, revenue sources. I want to review the 23 budget and show you where your tax dollars are being allocated towards. We're going to discuss the operating reserves that the mayor just covered and why they're important. And then I'm going to give a brief update on property taxes and kind of review how those function here in Indiana with the 2024 estimate. And then we will discuss specifically some public safety resources that are separate from our general fund. Okay, so from here you can see from us, our primary source of revenue is our property taxes. So for the general fund, and this is our primary operating fund, that makes up 42% of the general fund. And we're gonna go through these just specifically to pinpoint, a lot of these things are outside of our control, and we're gonna get into the details on the property taxes. But the next largest chunk there is our local income tax. So that is the county income tax. So we have a LIT, which is the local income tax, and then the COIT is the county option income tax, and that makes up our total income tax for the year. So that's another one of those revenue sources that we heavily rely on, and that's levied at the county level. And then our services and charges, and that makes up a lot of the pilot payments that are negotiated with other entities. And a pilot is a payment in lieu of taxes. So we do have some entities that don't pay taxes, but they do pay basically a service fee to the city. And so that's our services and charges, and that's the primary set of revenue sources here in the city and for the general fund specifically. Now I wanted to go over, so you saw what was coming in. Now how does that get broken out? And the reason we started this year with public safety for the first town hall is because if you look at the chart or the pie graph here, 77% of our general fund, which is our main operating fund, is made up of public safety. So it's an important piece, and it's a primary use of our funds. Given the size of the departments and their operating expenditures, it makes sense. This is not uncommon for most cities of our size. And then after that, you get down to trash fees, and then parks would be the next major department. And again, parks is next year. So I think some people often look to our operating fund and start to ask questions about streets. So that funding source is separate, and that's why we're talking about them separately tomorrow. Now, covering our operating reserves, so a lot of people ask, why is this important? Well, when you start the year off, if you ended with $0, you would have to take out a tax anticipation note. You'd have to have some funding at the beginning of the year to make sure you can pay your bills until your tax distribution arrives in June. By maintaining our 20% operating reserves, we have sufficient funding to get us to that first tax distribution. And so we've saved the taxpayers' interest, especially now in a rising interest rate environment. So the mayor has made it a pretty big point, and we want to continue to do this and maintain these operating reserves to save us save the taxpayers' interest over the life of that loan. Now I believe this will be our 6th consecutive year maintaining that operating reserve, and we will again budget for 2024 maintaining the 20%. So that's something I know the mayor is very proud of. I'm proud of it as well, and it helps save us a little bit of money here, and it helps for planning purposes as well. Now, where does this come from? So this is, again, in our general fund and primary source is property taxes. Most people don't understand how property taxes work, and we don't have as much control over that as people might like to think. So we're going to kind of talk about, how that operates here in Indiana, and why it's kind of out of our control, but what we can do to manage that tax rate. So for us, there's a couple of terms you'll hear is a NAV, which is a net assessed value. So that's the net assessed value of your property. So if you have, $100,000 home, you might have the standard deduction. Maybe you're over 65 and you have a deduction. You get a net assessed value. That's our tax base. Based off of that, you institute a levy. So that you can see here, that's the funds generated by applying the tax rate. So the levy, if you hear me talk about that, that's what we want to collect. So while the city of Lawrence may say we want to collect this money, it's again going to be based off of that net assessed value. But the key thing here is the NAV is actually calculated. Your assessed values are calculated and certified by the county. Then the levy, while we may say we want to collect those tax dollars, we actually are locked in and directed by the state on how much we can levy. So this year, our max levy for the general fund is 4%. Now, the state has taken some measures where I think the next 3 years, the max levy you can implement as a 4% growth. So again, that's another area that's kind of out of our control. But once they tell you what percent growth you have, that's what you run and take to the state, and they'll certify your tax rate. So for us, that's kind of property tax in a nutshell. So in the way you can think about it too, and when we saw this last year, we're going to go over the tax rates. So if your net assessed value, if what the county is valuing has gone up, just to collect the same amount of tax dollars, your rate will actually decline. And so we saw that this year. And so we're pretty pleased to show that off. And I'm going to show a lot of numbers, but we're going to get to an easier to read chart here in a second. So for our 2023 property tax rate, it was 67 cents, which is per $100. And you can see on the bottom line there how that's kind of been pretty flat, and we've seen a decline, and that's because of our assessed value growing. So again, as that value grows and we see a lot more development here in the city, our tax rate will continue to decline. And we have the 2024 estimates here. So this is a rough estimate, but again, so we were able to levy 4% growth on the general fund, and then with the states, or actually with the county certified assessed values, the AV grew just roughly 5%. So we do have some debt funds that have come in there, and that's keeping our tax rate relatively flat. It's kind of fluctuated from 22 down in 23, and then kind of, I would call equalized in 2024. But to visualize it, you can see historically from 2019 to 2024, the line graph there dictates the growth we've seen on our assessed values, and then you kind of see how much our property tax just kind of wavers here and there. And so one of the things we've done, and we'll hear about it a little bit from the fire chief, is how we have levied some debt to rebuild a much needed fire station. So we were able to do that without raising property taxes, because when we see that assessed value shooting up, we can institute a debt levy that keeps the tax rate flat. And so we've taken advantage of that plus existing debt falling off to complete a much needed project without raising property taxes. So that's a pretty big accomplishment that we're proud of, and we're hoping to see that opened up in the next few months. And we'll hear more from the fire chief on that project. So the last kind of piece here is our public safety tax. So this isn't included in the income tax that I had discussed earlier. This is in a separate fund and is split between the fire and the police department. This is an income tax levied at the county level, and you can see here that it's relatively flat. We had a little bit of a dip in 22, and that's actually kind of COVID related, the way I think the state and the county kind of equalized revenues dropping. They didn't want to hit us too hard, but we're kind of back in a good place. But again, this is a tax that actually we don't get to levy here. So right now it's 0.5% and hasn't been raised since 2014, if I remember correctly. So that's another area that's kind of outside of our control. With costs kind of rising, we're eating up all of that $3.9 million in 2023 pretty quickly. And that's just another one of our major revenue sources. So when we get into the actual budget process, you're going to see our public safety tax fund consistently discussed as an area of kind of issue for us, as our costs continue to rise much more and above what we can afford. We've had to use some reserves occasionally in this particular fund. And what we're going to continue to do is shift those into the general fund as we move forward. And we've seen that last year. We kind of did that on a couple of things, moved some short-term debt into the general fund to alleviate this fund. And for us, that's kind of where it becomes a bit of a challenge when your revenue is pretty flat and you can kind of see it fluctuates here. It makes planning a little difficult. So we haven't seen the growth we'd really need here with the public safety tax fund. So overall, I just wanted to touch on really our primary revenue sources, some of the citywide ones like the property taxes and local income taxes, and then specifically our primary revenue source for our public safety personnel. This is an area of kind of trouble for us, but we continue to monitor it and kind of just manage as we move forward. Overall, that's the gist of our revenue sources for public safety.
I just want to interrupt for a moment because there are some, I saw some faces, some looks as I was turning back and looking at everyone. So I see there are a few questions out there about some revenue. So does anyone have a question for Tyler? All right, well, if you do, write them down because we'll make sure, because we want to make sure you have a good understanding of what is happening here.
Thank you. Next up is the fire chief. We are a little ahead of schedule.
Thank you. Instead of throwing a bunch of numbers at you, our planning has drastically changed prior to COVID and after COVID. So I'll be able to give you specific numbers if you ask for them. But the reason I tell you our planning has changed quite a bit. In 2016, when we first took over, we were able to get some of the things that we operate with every day within a year's time, 8 to 12 months. So now our planning has branched out. There's stuff that we've done this year that apparatus-wise won't be here till 2025, over 2 years. So our plannings had to be more in-depth, and the costs have risen increasingly high. Steel has gone way out of bounds. One of the main objectives we had when we came in, we inherited kind of a problem. All our apparatus need to be replaced all at the same time. You never, ever want to get in a position where everything has to be done at once. So I worked with Jason Fenwick and then continued on with Tyler to try to develop a plan, as the police did with their vehicles, about a replacement plan. And there's good reason to do that. If you wait till you run the wheels off them and they're rusty and they're going, you can't get anything in trade, you can't sell them, you can't do anything with them. And there's a lot of pride in public safety. And it's not just about getting a shiny new fire truck and driving down the street in a new truck. There's a lot of it's a safety. And I'm going to take you back to 2016 to tell you where we got to now. It was very embarrassing. It was a known fact. We borrowed tires, alternators, and stuff from other fire departments, and it was really embarrassing. And now, in the first 5 years, we accomplished replacing all our frontline apparatus in just a tad over 5 years. And with doing that, you don't want to stop there because you don't want to get back to the point where you were before and have to replace everything. So now we're on a continual replacement plan. And when Tyler talked about the way this is set up, by the time some of this apparatus is due to replace, that debt's fallen off, and we're not really noticing like any big increase in our spending. To give you an idea, a ladder truck that you see going around Lawrence, we ordered one in 2016, which came in 17, and the price of that truck was right around $930,000. That truck that's coming in 2025, the same exact truck, is $1.382 million. That's how much it's gone up since 2016 till now. And you have to really plan ahead, because if you wait, then you're going to get behind the eight ball, not only for higher prices, and these prices are going up around every 30 to 45 days with the way that things are going. Ambulance used to take us around 4 to 6 months to get. We're on 2-year wait for an ambulance. So when we start our budget every year, we sit down and we go line by line. We don't just go like, okay, we need to increase the entire budget by 3 or 5%. It's very detailed. We sit down and we go line by line, what we've used in the previous year, what we've used so far this year, and then try to calculate using that method into what we're going to use in 2024. And there's some areas where we have spent less. There's some areas where we spent more, and so we have to shift these funds around. And then we have to validate that. When we sit down with the mayor and the controller, we present our budget. We have to show them why these are where they're at, and on why the expenditures. And Tyler gets that ahead of the meeting, so he can make his adjustments, or he can put his criteria on there too to make sure, just to make sure that we're in line with what we're doing. So back in this year in 23, some of the things that we've done, and I'll leave this open, like if any budget questions here at the end. Station 38 was a big project that will be opening up hopefully before the end of September. It was that was delayed a little bit with some things that we didn't foresee. That station was 36 years old, definitely needed replacement. That station was originally built for a volunteer department, which we had back in the 70s and 80s. It was never meant to be a 24-hour station where people lived and worked out of. So that's going to be really a proud facility. There's a lot of history there. This is the first station that we've built that had firefighter input. The firefighters never got zero input on the stations we've built here. And those are the stations we routinely have problems with as far as the living conditions. So there was a committee formed. They visited other stations in the area, even outside the city, and tried to decide, and talking to other firefighters, what worked and what didn't work. And I'm sure once this is up and running, we're going to be one of those departments that said, hey, this works, this doesn't work. So it's a learning experience, but it's a facility that we're going to be very proud of. The other thing, we never had a building that we can put our reserve apparatus in. They're always crammed either in another station or it's kept outside. So there's there's a building built right behind Station 38 that's going to house all our reserve apparatus. The other history-making part of that station, it's going to be built with a baby box in it. Those baby boxes are very expensive. There was a lot of controversy over the years. We got awarded, with the help of the people in our department in the state, we got awarded a grant. Those baby boxes are $11,000. The state is going to, they're going to fund $10,000 of that. We had a business that is putting in the other $1,000, and then the install on those is almost $4,000. And another local business right here in Lawrence has picked up that cost. So it's not costing the city of Lawrence or its taxpayers any money to have this baby box put in there. If you those aren't familiar with it, it's a Safe Haven baby box. It's a great location, and it's right off the interstate. There's no cameras around that box. And I'll tell you, regardless what your feelings are about it, it's much better to have a baby put in that box in dumpster or somewhere else. So once they put the baby in there, the box is locked, it's climate controlled, and then we have to, there's a lot of mechanisms in there to make us aware that baby is in that box. And so there's procedures we have to follow after that baby is placed in that box. We've got a new engine that was ordered, was supposed to be in over a year ago. We are just going to take delivery on that next month. That is going to replace engine 39 over on Richhart, and then that engine would become a reserve apparatus. Our paramedics carry drugs, and we operated underneath a license from our medical director at the hospital. Now we had to go get our own DEA number, and I'll tell you, the federal government's really strict on these drugs. So now we have our own DEA number, and there's strict handling of these narcotics. So we had to purchase these lock boxes on all the apparatus that's done off of like a fingerprint or your last four, your social, so they can log in who takes these drugs, what time they took, how much was taken out of there. And so we have to be real careful with our audits. There's a lot of paperwork and recordings done with this, because if there's any drugs missing, then it's not only us, but it's our medical director too. So we operate underneath our own DEA license now for our narcotics. And there's these drugs we have to carry because of the stuff the ALS, our paramedics, operate with. Also, we had heart monitors that were between 12 and 14 years old, and those are the monitors that when a paramedic comes and renders service, they monitor. They put these on you. They do like the EKGs, there's the blood pressure built into it. And so these monitors that we, with the help of the controller, we finance these over a 10-year period. We pay a monthly fee. But what we did is actually we did it for 10 years. So 5 years from this year, we get brand new monitors and don't have to pay anything more. So the technology and everything changes so much. So in 5 years, so those monitors are set up for the next 10 years. So nobody was going to have to mess with that for a while. And they're new state of the art. And those heart monitors actually can shock people. There's a lot of things they can do with. Bob, besides the monitors and the capability of shocking, is there anything else that? Okay. And there again, it just better enhances what we can do for the citizens. And this new equipment, and like I said, it's not just like, oh, they got shiny new equipment. It's to better help our people be more proficient in the services they provide for our citizens. We did something for the first time this year too, is we did a lateral process. EMS has had a shortage. It's all over the country. It's not in Lawrence, Indiana. It's everywhere. So we were able to attract 7 paramedic firefighters from other fire departments in the area and brought them on. They go through like a modified training. It's not like send them to recruit school like for 16 to 22 weeks. So these are experienced firefighters. They're brought on. They're trained by the crews with the supervision of our training chief to make sure they know the Lawrence way of doing things. And they're paramedics. The advantage of that is it saves us from sending them to school, to a paramedic school that lasts almost 2 years. It's time consuming and costly. So when we get these people, they have experience. They're a certified paramedic to the state of Indiana, and they also have some fire experience come from another fire department. We've had very good luck with them, and so we could welcome them aboard this year. There's 7 new ones that we have. We're getting ready to come up on, in 2018, we had what they call an ISO rating. It's an independent firm that comes in and they evaluate the flow of fire hydrants, our training, the hose we use, the nozzles, our manpower, where the fire stations are located. It takes a couple months to get the survey completed. And last time we had the survey done, these ratings is what is put out there for what people pay for their commercial fire insurance and your residential fire insurance. So the lower rating, that starts off at 10, and the lower rating you have, the lower those premiums are. So our last rating was a 3 out of 10, and we were almost to a 2. So we're very hopeful that we've corrected some of the stuff that could be corrected, and hopefully in November, after they review what we've done, we'll be down to a 2, which results in lower premiums for our businesses here in Lawrence and our homeowners. So that'd be a big plus. There's not a whole lot of fire departments that have cities that have a 2 rating, but that's what we're pretty sure we can get this done. Some of the things that we are doing for 24, we are involved with this rescue task force. So all this talk about these active shootings going along, schools, churches, wherever. If you remember that nightclub in Florida, there was a big disconnect between police and fire. They believe now that a lot of those people could have gotten out that were injured and could have been saved. So now there's trained firefighters that work with law enforcement. This is not a a situation where the firefighters go in on their own. They're under the supervision of the police department, and they're they're armed, and they'll take these crews in and an area of that's deemed a warm zone, which means they know where the threat is. So there may be some people that have been injured in that area. The police take those first responders, those firefighters in that area, are able to get those people out. We're underneath their command, because when they say it's time to go, it's time to pick up and get out. And so those are only operating warm zones. And like I said, that's only when they can identify where the threat is, and that threat's not valid. And that could change, and that's up to the police to say, like, listen, that threat's coming back this way, or there's another area that's in more need. So they'll move those first responders to another area. Lawrence was probably the catalyst for this in the whole Marion County, which is kind of cool. It started here. We have several people working really hard on that. Our police and fire have trained together, and now across the county, what the end result of this thing is we want everybody trained together, because if there's a large incident anywhere in the county, we depend on each other's resources to help out. So no matter if our fire department's with another law enforcement or law enforcement's with any other fire department, they all know the movement of each other, so they can get this stuff accomplished when it happens. And I believe in the environment, the climate we're in, it's not if something happens, it's when. And it's sad to say, I mean, but we have to be realistic, and we have to train for the worst. So. A few years back, we got a grant for some ballistic vests, so our firefighters on certain runs they have bulletproof vests on underneath their fire gear. And back 20 years ago, if you told me firefighters have been wearing bulletproof vests, I would have never believed it. But there's a definite need for that today. Some of the stuff in 24 that's gone, we've got a new ambulance ordered. And a remount. Because of the cost of these new ambulances, we've also gone to the route where the boxes that we purchase are aluminum bodies. The back of that ambulance, the box can be taken off and put on another chassis, which is, so instead of spending like $300,000, these remounts are like $168,000. So we're trying to utilize that to try to save some money and try to get some newer ambulances on the road too. The cost of those ambulances have gone up like 40%, just in the last couple of years. So the only truck that we really have not updated is our tactical truck, which is still in really good condition. I don't believe in just replacing something just because so many years. This truck only gets used on heavy extrication, like cutting people out of cars and so forth. And the only thing we're trying to do that is update the lights on it, because the rest of the truck is in perfectly good working order. We're a merit fire department, so every 2 years we have to keep an active hiring list, and we also have to keep an active promotional list for lieutenants and captains. So this year we were doing our hiring process. We keep a 2-year list. By merit law, we have to do that. Next year is our promotional list, which we have to keep a 2-year active list for our lieutenants and captains on that list. Then some of the stuff going down the road, the future equipment, we're going to have to order another engine and some of our extrication tools that we use to cut people out of cars with. We've got that on the drawing board as far as we have a training tower located down here at Lee Road and 59th Street. That tower is about 23 years old. We haven't really done anything with that, so there's some much needed repairs due to that building. And then one of the other things too that we've dropped a lot of the back injuries for our civilian EMS and our firefighters is we have these power cots that so some of our heavier patients, there's no lifting directly from the firefighter civilians. There's hydraulics that lift that patient up and they just slide them into the back of the ambulance, and that's cut back on our back injuries significantly. So. An engine's another thing. You could order a fire engine and get a decent fire engine for about $450,000. The one we just ordered is $901,000. Same Same, nothing, no frills, no extra stuff. That's how much the costs have increased on this equipment. So when you look at that and you talk about Tyler, some of the stuff that's being flatlined as far as our revenue source coming in, we have to be very strategic in how our planning is, and we have to make this money go further, and we have to do even better planning. And I think we've done really good planning prior, but we also have to get even better going into the future because of some of these cost increases that we don't have control over. And I think I'll open that up to any questions, but that's basically, I was trying to give you just like the schematics, the matrix, and how we do the budgets. Then we don't just slap numbers down. It's a very methodical way of looking at it. We try to be realistic. There's not really any fluff in there. So we look for grants continually, to look for grants, not only the ones that aren't matching, but also the ones that are matching. And we actually just received another grant to send paramedics to school, which is very expensive. To send one medic to school right now, it's between $7,000 and $9,000 to just get that paramedic training. So we just obtained a grant for that, and we're continuing looking for those grants. We've got some good people that are on the lookout for this stuff, so you got to take advantage of them when you can. Is there any questions from anything I've covered? It's kind of like, yes, ma'am.
Hold on. I'm coming so everyone can hear you, and also since it's being recorded.
Years ago, we talked about your concern about AEDs that were portable in vehicles being new enough that they were going to work effectively.
Yeah, and that's actually those new monitors. They've got the defibrillators in there, so we've got that. The chiefs and their staff cars, they have the AEDs. More and more buildings are getting them also. So yeah, that was a high concern a few years ago, and we've got, with the help of the controller, we've got that lined out because those new monitors include those AEDs built in them.
Chief, you want to introduce your deputy chiefs in between questions here?
So back here, I've got Chief Brian Funk, who's our Deputy Chief of Operations, and Deputy Chief Wallace, who is our Deputy Chief of Administration. Brian just joined us. Jim Hardy retired after several years. Brian was the B Shift Battalion Chief for years, and Battalion Chief is in charge of a shift. We have 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, so it's an A, B, and C shift. So Brian's had to adjust from doing a 24-hour shift to working five days a week. So, and those two are a big help in our planning on a day-to-day basis.
Hi, I'm Liz Mazur, and I have a question about, has there been any consideration given to reducing the upkeep of the fire station's grounds, their landscaping, by implementing sustainable plantings such as native flowers instead of lots of costs, money, effort spent on mowing grass? Has that been looked into?
Not that that's not important, but we've had so many other things to grasp and try to take care of. There's only 2 of the 5 stations that are cut by an outside source. The rest of the stuff is done by our firefighters internally. And the stations that get cut are Station 36 out on Oak Landing Road and Station 37 out on German Church, which are huge. And the firefighters in the last administration were cutting the lawn at 36 on Oak Landing Road. They catch a run. It took them a while to come back up. They're sweaty, full of grass, and trying to get their gear on. So after conversations with our mayor and controller, we can't operate that way because it was hard for them to hear the runs. And when it's 75, 80, 90 degrees out there and they're trying to get gear on when you're wet and full of grass, it didn't work. The way we're doing it now is much easier, but it's just not it's not something we have considered. Not that we wouldn't consider it, but we just really haven't had the time to do that. We inherited a pretty bad situation, and it took us, really, to be honest with you, a good 5 years to get things at least stable. And we were going without bathrooms being fixed for 3 to 5 months. And they joke because when we first got in here, I told them it was going to slow down in June. I just didn't tell them what June. So,
Chief, we have another question over here.
Chief, my name is Aaron Short. Appreciate you being here, and deputies likewise. I just have some questions related to budgeting when it comes to recruiting new officers, officer pay. What are your perspectives there, as well as a pension? Just any comments on that?
Yeah, and I think we just got done. The union just got done with their PAC interviews and stuff, and there was a lot of education that was done there. So like when this last year, when the mayor and the controller tried to get those raises through, and I'm trying to answer your question here, but people say, well, 5% is 5%. You got the 5% bonus, it's the same amount of money. But what people didn't understand, it wasn't 5% towards their pension base. It was 5% bonus, which didn't raise their base pay. So when a firefighter is looking to come with the fire department, the first thing to do, they'll go to the website and they'll look at what everybody's base pay is. Well, that bonus does not reflect on a base pay. Any raises want to be done on a pension base, and that because that's what everybody looks at, and that helps you retain people. It helps in your recruiting, and we obviously, the police or the fire department don't want to be a stepping stone. I think we have very well trained police officers as well as firefighters. We don't want to spend the time and effort and train them and have them go somewhere else. So it's very important that we maintain that pay so we can retain the good ones and be attractive for somebody else looking for an opportunity, a career in public safety. So it is. It's a priority-wise, that's a top priority, and I think our union did a really good job of educating some of our candidates. Not only there's some of the incumbents and didn't really understand the bonus versus the pension base. So I applaud them for trying to at least take the time to educate, because it's all about education and communication.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Chief Patalis. We appreciate all you are doing to help keep us safe and keep our fire department going. Next up will be police. And so here with us is Chief Bigsby. And also in the back of the room, we have Deputy Chief Gary Woodruff. So thank you so much both for being here. After their presentation, again, we'll do the same format where you will be able to ask questions.
All right. Excuse me. Thanks so much. All right. So we have a little presentation here. Hopefully I don't bore you to death with everything I have to cover here. So I took over Chief May the 22nd of this year, taking the helm after Deputy Chief Woodruff. And with that, we had a few changes that came up with Chief Woodruff going over to the media side of the police department. By then, we did a change with our command staff, and as you can see, Deputy Chief Schneider is our operations deputy chief. And then we have Deputy Chief Klein, and he's the media relations communications. He also oversees communications. A couple other changes that we had. You probably already know Captain Cantrell. If you don't, he's the administration commander. Then we have Captain Ryan Romero. He's going to have his official appointment on the 18th on this Friday. Captain Sostry. He's the investigations commander. And then we also have Captain Stone and Captain Matthews that oversee our reserve division, both on the operations side and the investigation side. Right now, we're in the process of taking over, having a new communications director. Leanne Wolf was our communications director for about 10 years or so, I think 10 or 11 years. And so she has now taken another position, and so now we're actually looking to fill that position as well. So the communications portion of our of the city falls underneath the police, and so they do service both fire and police. However, according to staffing, they do fall under the police department side of it. All right. Next, we have some of the accomplishments that we've had this past year. We've done a lot. We had grant funding. We received about $19,000 from the Edward Byrne grant from the Department of Justice. And with that funding, we were able to purchase some ballistic helmets, active shooter vests, carriers, and some ballistic shields. That helps the officers whenever we're confronted with a threat. Someone with a weapon, you've probably seen a couple of times earlier this year, where we were confronted with some assailants that had rifles. And so now what we're trying to do is make sure that our officers are equipped with the equipment that they need. On another slide that I have up here, I am going to be discussing a little bit about those active shooter vests. Those are the actual real thick carriers that we have that are rifle rated. When they first came out, they were about 10 pounds. And now they have new vests that come out. They're about half of that weight. But I'll go into that a little bit later. Community relations and outreach. So we've got back out of the COVID era for the most part, and we're back in-person Crime Watch meetings, and those are going quite well. With National Night Out, we had 19 of those groups that were out and participating in National Night Out. So that was a great event for us that we have each and every year. Community Safety Day, it got canceled this year, but we might be revisiting that a little bit later. But that's one of our most fun days as well, is to show off our tools and everything, so people have the time to interact with our law enforcement officers. We have also, on the communication side of it, integrated new and trained communication supervisors. Some of them have also taken new roles as Leanne had went out. Our supervisors have been able to now integrate with some new training as they've taken on new roles as well. So there's been a lot of different changes inside of the police department as well as the communications over the last couple of months. Next thing, we have accelerated LPD hiring process. So typically one process takes about a year or so to get one officer, or how many other officers that we're looking for. It takes about a year to get through that full process. So we've kind of streamlined that for the most part, and was able to have at least, I think we had 3 processes this year, and we're going to try to get another 4th one in. As Chief Batalis was saying earlier, public safety has taken a hit with people trying to get into law enforcement, trying to get into the fire service. And we're trying to find different innovative ways so that we can overcome some of those barriers. So right now, our authorized manpower strength is 65 police officers. And right now we have 57 police officers, and we're slated to have 2 more additional officers come on August the 18th here on Friday. They're going to get sworn in. We are also trying to get officers as well from other agencies. And so it's very competitive when it comes to salaries and pay and benefits. Unlike the fire department, our model merit is separate. So we go through a state model merit system where it takes a little bit, where we have to, it's more strict and more stringent as far as how we can get lateral transfers over to the police department. So we just can't take a direct lateral over. So now we have to offer different pay and benefits so that officers will want to come over here. That does reduce some of their FTO, their field training officer time, that they have to be out on the road. So we are looking at ways how we can overcome some of those barriers and challenges and get more officers here within the city of Lawrence. They are doing a great job, each and every day out here on the street. They're covering a lot of area, but we're trying to get our staffing back up to those authorized strength numbers. 2023, we started our Citizens Academy. I think our last one was back in 2019, right before the pandemic really took off. We started a class, and then all of a sudden the pandemic hit, then everything got shut down. So a lot of the people came back out, and we graduated 17 people out of our last academy earlier this year. So there's 17 people. And those are our average citizens that are who participate not only like in our Crime Watch programs, but anybody who work here in the city of Lawrence has room in our Citizens Academy. So we open it up each and every year, typically around March timeframe. We open that up for acceptance of applications. But yes, we had 17 graduates this year. We've also found a way, actually improved our technology capabilities for getting reserve police officers. So our reserve police officers, they're just average citizens that want to join the police ranks. And so they have the same exact powers as the police officers, but they don't get paid for it. These are volunteer service people who want to join our our police department as a reserve police officer. They have their normal jobs, and then they come out and then they work along with us. Right now, our authorized strength is right around 40 reserve police officers, and we have 23. So we're doing a robust process and bringing more on. We're going to try to get 13 more reserves on here by the end of the year. So we are trying to find ways to get more people in the reserve service and also get more people into the merit side of it as well. And so we have actually put our reserve interest forms online so people can just go on the city's website, click it, upload their information into the system, and then it goes to our reserve division commander, and then he's able to pull those applications, run backgrounds, and then do interviews. Pretty much the same process that you would go through as a merit police officer. So some of our remaining goals that we're going to be implementing. One of them is a employee scheduling software. So right now we are still operating on an old Excel spreadsheet where we click and then all of our officers are actually put on there, and then that's how they are assigned their districts, assigned their assignments, when they take off or when they have regular PTO time that they need to use. So what this will allow us to do is to eliminate the old Excel spreadsheets that we are using, use daily scheduling in districts per shift, unit, and division. So this would be across the board. So not only in our operations division side of it, but it'll also go toward our investigations and as well as communications, better allocation of resources. It also has requesting the time off process. It'll help streamline that. And then it'll avoid group notification via text and email to those specified to eliminate the department-wide texting at all hours. So right now, if there's a void on a shift, we'll send it out. Then that information is paged out to the department. Hey, can you fill this? And then that's how that is filled. That will all go away with this new system that we're wanting to go to coming up here in the next year. Reestablish the department social media. Chief Woodruff has been working very diligently already and got us back up on Facebook and got us running on Twitter. He's the media guru. You probably see him on television all the time. So this is his wheelhouse and specialty. Yes, we are back up on Facebook and Twitter already. Did you want to expand on anything with that, Gary, or we're good? Okay. The next thing is the appointment announcement of a new 911 communications director. So we're still in that same process, the vetting process to find someone to run the 911 communications center. So hopefully we will have that position filled in short order. We only have, we're going to hire 2 additional communicators to maximize our numbers. So our authorized strength right there is 14 telecommunicators. They worked all 3 shifts just like our merit police officers as well. So we only have, I believe, only 1 or 2 vacancies left in communications. Ongoing projects. So we had put in for a grant for Department of Homeland Security, Indiana Department of Homeland Security, to purchase a Bearcat armored vehicle for our SWAT team. The current MRAP that we have right now, I think we got that back in 2016 is when we got our MRAP, which was a military surplus vehicle that we got to protect our team, especially during hostile situations. There has been a lot of parameters surrounding as the utilization of the MRAP, meaning that, since the government owns it, they can tell you what to do with that. So we used to have it in our parades and everything like that. And now we cannot utilize our MRAPs in parades. So now we want to get a Bearcat. It's a little bit more agile than that MRAP. It's a very large vehicle in which the Bearcat will be able to help our team get in and out of situations a lot quicker than what they have been with that larger vehicle. The next thing was the on here you will see that the active shooter vest place. I had talked about that a little bit earlier, about that having a lot less weight than what it used to be. I mean, that's a lot of weight that we already carry on our gun belts, and now we have to carry all that on our chests. And so we're looking at ways to reduce the weight that we have to carry on, especially when we're in very stressful, high intense, and rapidly evolving situations. Our 2024 objectives, like I mentioned before, we wanted to increase our authorized manpower strength on both the merit side and the reserve side. One thing that we're also looking at, which is trying to implement what they call a citywide SafeCam program. And what that is, that's a way for residents to register their privately owned security cameras with the police department. And if a crime occurs, investigators or officers will have that information of all the cameras for the people who voluntarily registered them, so we can contact that homeowner for that footage. The systems are not monitored by the police department or anything like that. I want to repeat that. They're not monitored by the police department. There's no way for our agency to even connect to those directly. It just allows us to know, hey, if a crime happens here, who all in this area has a camera? So we don't have to spend countless hours going out there canvassing neighborhoods and trying to figure out, hey, did this camera pick up this information? Did this camera pick up that information? So this is a way that our residents can help us when situations like that might arise. The next thing is behavioral health initiatives. Working with our chaplains program to identify and help with resources, because we have a lot of times where officers are going to homes or residents multiple times for people who might need assistance as far as like immediate detentions. Hey, is this person taking their medication? Are there any other available resources that we can help them so that we don't have to go back and have to see them with their different challenges? So we're looking at the behavioral health aspect of that, and that's going to help us help our community so that we can help those with those challenges. We want to reestablish the cadet program. A lot of our cadets actually have aged out. Our age limit is 21. A lot of them have aged out. And then a lot of them actually go on to be police officers with our department or with other agencies. We've seen a lot of success in the cadet program. It's very beneficial to our youth and our teens. Find a way, find a career path into public safety of their choosing. If we had some of them that actually went on to be firefighters, they were EMTs certified and trained, and then they ended up going to be firefighters. We thought they would have been police officers, but it didn't work out that way. One thing I do want to look at is trying to have our first annual Teen Academy. So right now we have our regular Citizens Academy for our citizens, our grown adults, but I want to look at trying to get our youth more involved and engaged instead of, that idle time. Come over to our department so you can go through our Teen Academy. So that's something that we're looking into and trying to implement in 2024. We've had, I believe, 4 or 5 different Citizens Academy, and so we want to start our own alumni association for citizens who went through our academy. That's a 12-week program. That's a lot of dedication when people go through that. They want to learn everything that we do and get more knowledge of that. So those are things that we're going to be focusing on implementing next year. A crime analyst, we're looking at that as well. That would be someone who would be attached to our investigations division. So it's almost like having a whole nother detective who's a civilian citizen who's helping us gather information, data, collection of data to help us solve crimes and or look at potential leads to other crimes, not only here in the city of Lawrence, but if they're abroad as well. Chief Patalis talked about the Fleet with the Fire. We had, some of the same challenges years ago with having a lot of our fleet that was, old service life. We like to try to switch those out every 3 years, and the cost continues to go up. So right now, It costs us about $40,000 to purchase one police vehicle, but it costs us an additional $15,000 to actually put the equipment into those vehicles. That's with the body-worn cameras. So we have front and rear cameras that go into there. That's all one system, even with the camera the camera that's on the officer's body. So all of that is one system. So all of that goes into the police cars. We don't like to, take things out, piecemeal things together. When we get a new car, we like to have new equipment to go with that. And we have about 100 vehicles actually in our fleet on the police side, and that includes our reserve vehicles as well. We've seen the increase, and it's steadily going up. But while we're addressing it right now, we're able to head off some of those issues before they get real severe, and then we're dealing with engines and transmissions that are going out in these vehicles. Another infrastructure thing that we want to look at is our indoor range. If you've been to Community Safety Day, it's right behind the fire tower, right here off of 59th Street. That's the Craig Herbert Tower, the Craig Herbert Range, and that's been up since 2004, 2005. And so some of the things that have, come in to issues like Chief was saying, like the roof, and some of the things are starting to age out a little bit. Some of the software work, some of the trim that goes around that building. So that's some things that we would like to address. And then inside that range, it's a green range, which is frangible ammo, and it's not ball ammo out of a vehicle. So it's a lot more environmentally friendly ammo that we use inside that range. But with that being said, there's blowers inside that range too that has to take the exhaust and blow it out instead of keeping all that in house, and we're not shooting around a whole lot of smoke. So there are some things that we need to address with that as well. Last couple of things I have here are improving technology that we have with our SWAT team, and that's things such as our interior drones and exterior drones, so that we can make sure that our guys are safe on their operations. So those are a couple of things that we're looking at as it relates to improving our technology equipment for our SWAT team. The last thing is emergency medical dispatcher training. Chief Woodruff and I talked about that earlier today, and it's to get our dispatchers a lot more advanced with some of the technology that they have done in our communications 911 center. So we're looking at that as well. I think that's about it. I know I kind of went through that PowerPoint pretty quick. There's a lot of bullet points, a lot of information that was in there, and wanted to see if you guys had any questions for me on the police side.
Here I come.
A number of years ago, I saw something on social media or on one of the websites about Lawrence Township schools installing gunshot detection technology. Is that still in place?
I can't speak for what the school is doing right now with that. I do know about the technology that's out there. We actually did try to use the ShotSpotter detection. It's very expensive. I believe when we looked at it, to have it throughout the city, it's right around $75,000 to $100,000. So it's a very expensive piece of equipment, but I don't know if the school went through with that process yet.
All right, now we have a question again over here.
Again, Aaron Short, Chief Biggsby, appreciate you being here, and appreciate all you and your officers do for the city. Just curious about just the rising cost of living, inflationary pressures on the economy. Where are you seeing that impact you guys most, and what can we do to help?
That's a good question. We have seen an increase with costs with everything across the board, even with the officers. I think the thing is to really take a look at some of the slides that Tyler had presented earlier about how the public safety tax is done and how it's allocated. As you can see, that public safety represents 77% of the overall budget. So it would be beneficial if there's ways that we can increase that. I know a lot of people don't like to hear taxes, but unfortunately, with everything increasing, not only on the police side, it's also increasing on the fire side, and everything is pretty much staying flat as a sense of revenue that's coming in. So I think it would be beneficial if the residents do reach out and say, hey, is there a way that we could help? That is one of those ways that we can help is by increasing that public safety tax.
One thing that Curtis is being very polite about and not indicating to you how important public safety tax is to the city of Lawrence. This is an example of where excluded city status doesn't work for us anymore. We've gone from a city of about 7,000 back in 1968 when excluded cities began. We're over 50,000 right now. The way it works in Marion County is that we can't raise our own public safety tax without all of Marion County agreeing to that. We're 50,000. That's about 7% of all of Marion County. The only way we can raise our public safety taxes is we are able to get the rest of the county on board. Right now, Indianapolis has a surplus in terms of their public safety because they can't hire enough officers. You mentioned, I think you heard mentioned earlier, that it's tough for everybody to be able to fill their roles in their departments. It's never been this hard for anybody else. So in a sense, when you look at the Indianapolis budget, for example, they have a lot more, I would say, play in their budget, so they don't really need any additional monies. They need to fill positions. So we've talked to our counselors in the past, and we certainly will continue to talk to them in the future, that if they can lobby with the city-county council and get them to introduce the possibility of a public safety tax increase, that would be very good for us and Speedway and Beech Grove and Southport. As Curtis correctly pointed out, the last public safety tax increase was in 2014. That's almost 10 years ago. I can't think of any other tax that hasn't gone up in the last 10 years except for public safety. So we will continue to try to lobby with the city-county council and with Marion County to try to get some additional funds for our specific public safety.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Chief. So we've been very efficient here tonight. So as we wrap things up much earlier than anticipated, I want to just point a few other people out. I want to say thank you to a few city employees who are here. Dan Zerner, Economic Development. Jared Hooten is in the back, and he does our website management and is responsible for all this good stuff that we can be here and have some technology to better do our public meetings, and also lots of graphic design and all kinds of good stuff. Jeanette Jackson, HR. And then also in the back, we have Councilor Freeman, one of our Common Council members. Thank you for joining us this evening. One of the things that we did want to share is we were a little disappointed, obviously, that we had to cancel Community Safety Day, but we have lots of events happening in the city for those to join us. It was lightning at the time of setup, and that was kind of, didn't sound very public safety, right, to be getting the event going with lightning going on and setting up metal stages and those kinds of things. So, but don't forget, Farmers Market goes through October 5th. And then once we hit September, we have lots of things happening. LFD has a pickleball tournament that is on September 9th. The next weekend would be the 16th is Barbecue and Blues at Fort Harrison State Park. The next weekend is Loggers in Lawrence over at the Fort Bend Cultural Campus. And then the 30th is Dia Latino de Lawrence. That rounds out September for us. And then on October 7th, we have the Indy Half. So lots of stuff happening in Lawrence every weekend. And we want to encourage all of you to be involved. Also, as you were here this evening and you heard these presentations, we would love to get more feedback from you. If you think of anything else, please just email either one of the chiefs or Tyler or me. And I didn't introduce myself at the beginning, but I am Corey Korn, Chief of Staff for the city. All our email addresses can be found on the city website. If you just click on our name, you'll be able to contact us. So please feel free to send any questions our way. We are here to serve you. We are happy to see you involved and coming out and being part of these sessions. As a reminder, if you want to hear about parks, DPW, Department of Public Works, or streets, join us tomorrow in this room. We are 6 to 8, and we will have the budget town hall for those departments at that time. We did have one question submitted online, and that was it, because there is the opportunity to do that. That was for parks, so we will be addressing that tomorrow at that budget town hall. Chiefs, anything else that you thought of before we wrap it up? Tyler? All right, we'll be around for a few minutes if there's something you want to ask. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening.